before, we're going to reduce fractions in a different way. In the fact that we're going to be grouping we're going to reduce by grouping factors equal to 1. And we're also going to start dividing fractions by fractions. So the factors in the problem below are arranged in order from least to greatest. Notice that some factors appear in both the dividend and the divisor. Since 2 divided by 2 is equal to 1, and 3 divided by 3 is equal to 1, we mark the combination of factors to 1 in this problem. So this is 1, this is 1, this is 1. So looking at the factors this way, the problem becomes 1 times 1 times 1 times 5, which is 5. So we made that big complicated problem turn into just this little tiny 5. So let's reduce this fraction. So I'm going to start at the top. I see I have a 2 at top, a 2 at bottom. So those can just get crossed out. Move the next number on top. It's 2. There's another 2 on bottom, so I cross those out. Next, I have a 2 up here. There's no more 2's at the bottom, so I have to leave that 2. Now I have a 5 on top, and I see there's a 5 on bottom, so I cross those out. So what I'm left with is just, these are all, if I cross it out, it's 1, and 1 times everything else is whatever that other thing else is. So all I have left on top is a 2, and all I have left on bottom is a 3. So therefore my answer is just 2/3. So I went from this big, huge problem down 2/3 just by crossing some numbers out. This simplifying an expression will be referred to as removing a factor of 1. So when we divide 10 by 5, we're answering the question, how many 5s are in 10? When we divide 3/4 by 1/2, we are answering the same type of question. In this case, the question is how many 1/2s are in 3/4? Well, it's easy to see how many 5s are in 10. It's not easy to see how many halves are in 3/4. So remember in lesson 50 when the divisor is a fraction, we take 2 steps to find the answer. First, we find out how many of the divisor are 1. This is the reciprocal of the divisor. Then we use the reciprocal to answer the original division problem by multiplying. Basically, remember, don't ask why, flip the second fraction and multiply. So it says how many 1/2s are in 3/4, which is the same as saying 3/4 divided by 1/2. Okay, so 3/4 divided by 1/2. Remember, don't ask why, flip the second fraction and multiply. So we do 3/4 times 2 over 1, so I flip the second fraction. Now, multiply the tops, you get 6, multiply the bottoms, you get 4, reduces to 1 2/4, reduces to 1 1/2. Okay. So, I start with my problem, flip the second fraction, multiply, and then reduce to get my answer. So how many 3/4 are in 1/2? Okay, so the question is just flipped around. So 1/2 divided by 3/4. Don't ask why, flip the second fraction and multiply. 4/6, which is equal to 2/3. So there's 2/3, 3/4, and 1/2. Don't ask why, flip the second fraction and multiply. Now, canceling fractions make the multiplication and division fractions easier. You can use the same techniques you use to reduce fractions to simplest terms when you multiply and divide fractions. So I have 2/3 times 3, or 3 over 1, so this is equal to 2. Now, I could multiply this 2 times 3 and get 6, and 3 times 1 get 3, 6 divided by 3 is 2. But there's an easier way. Okay? Remember, if we're multiplying fractions, this is basically one big fraction. So on top I have 2 times 3, on bottom I have 3 times 1. Now remember, a little bit ago we talked about if we have a number on top and a number on bottom and everything in multiplication, we can just cross them out. So start with this 2, there's no 2 on bottom, so I can't do anything with that. But I look at this 3, there's another 3 on bottom, down here. Now, even though it's not right above it, there's still 1 on top and 1 on bottom. So we can still cross them out. So now I have 2 over 1, which is equal to 2. Okay. So here's some more examples of this with some bigger numbers to kind of help you. So I have 24 35ths times 78ths. Okay, let's start with, remember, this is like one big fraction bar. So I have 24 times 70 over 35 times 8. Start with 24. There's not one on bottom, but what I do know is that 8 goes into 24. So 8 goes into 8 one time. 8 goes into 24 3 times. I also see that 35 goes into 70. 35 goes into 35 once, 35 goes into 70 twice. So now I have 3 times 2 is 6, 1 times 1 is 1. My answer is just 6. Once again, we're just making our problems more simple. Okay. Now on the bottom, 16/18 divided by 32/6. I have to flip the second fraction and multiply. Okay. I know 16 goes into 32 twice. 6 goes into 18 3 times. I now have 1/6. Just something to think about. We'll get into it more as we move farther along in math this year. But something to try out sometimes, maybe not such big numbers, but we refer to this as canceling. And when I showed in our help operations with fractions box, talks about canceling, that's what it's talking about. So go ahead, do the practice set. Remember for A and B, we're going to cross out numbers that are the same on top and bottom, fractions of 1 in the bottom, known as y, flip the second fraction and multiply. So go ahead, do those 4 problems, come back to class with any questions you may have.